Hello, and welcome to the Fresh Air Sci-Fi Show. I'm Joe.
And I'm Dave.
And, God.
Have you been masturbating?
Well, sort of. I've been audibly masturbating. Yeah. No, this room is very hot at the moment. We're trying to find the balance. But unfortunately, the middle floor and the top floor are controlled by the same thermostat. So if the middle floor is cold, then it turns it on up here, and then I end up having to open the windows up here, and it's just
nightmare.
Yeah. So yeah. Plus, I also realised I'd nearly finished my. Oh no, I have finished my beer. So I figured I'd quickly use that last song as a way to run downstairs and up again. Well, you know, it's the stream day, and I've decided to enjoy a couple of these tonight because I deserve it.
It's Tuesday.
Exactly. And what else are you going to do on a Tuesday if not,
Exactly.
enjoy a stream and a beer or whatever your tipple is?
You'll be enjoying a different kind of stream after those couple of beers.
Yeah, this is true. Hopefully what happened last week doesn't happen tonight. Maybe what I should have done last week, though, is flip the turntables back on and just had a bit of music going in the background whilst I was gone. So, anyway, tonight, what are we doing? I've completely forgotten. Oh, yes, Zombieland. P-Zombieland, in fact. So this isn't zombies that pee. I know we've just been discussing pee, but that's not what we're talking about here. P-zombies, as in philosophical zombies. So, Dave, do you want to just give us a bit of background why we're doing this stream tonight?
Mostly because it's sort of linked to the last one that we did. So it kind of ties into Mary's room argument and Fred's red, in that it's a thought experiment about whether or not consciousness is physical.
Right. So we last week we were speaking about Mary's room, and we were talking about how there's that additional sort of qualia there, or as I called it at the time, a subjective fact that you learn by experiencing color. So this is a completely different way to have a look at the thought experiment about whether consciousness is physical or not.
Yeah. And while it's a thought experiment, it's also done in a slightly different kind of way, which I thought would make it kind of interesting as we're going on about thought experiments. This one is less, it's less rhetorical in that it gives an argument and then uses the thought experiment about the philosophical zombie as part of the evidence of the argument itself.
Right. So, what's the actual argument?
Okay, the actual argument comes from David Chalmers.
Okay.
The first premise is it is conceivable that there are zombies. Second premise, if it is conceivable that there are zombies, it is metaphysically possible that there are zombies. If it is third premise, if it is metaphysically possible that there are zombies, then consciousness is non-physical. Conclusion, consciousness is non-physical.
Okay. I mean, explain to me how, if you conceive of something that makes it metaphysically possible. I mean, explain the link between that argument for me.
Okay, well, the idea is that if you can coherently conceive of something in a way that is consistent, coherent, has no contradictions, then it's possible for it to exist. That's not necessarily actual, or not necessarily even possible in this actual world, but possible in some possible world.
Right. Okay. So basically, anything you can conceive of could fit into that, not just zombies, anything. Or does there have to be at least some sort of grounding in some form of reality that they have to exist?
No, not necessarily. If you can conceive of it, but this is the thing, it's not just I can conceive of it. Like you can probably imagine some creature that's like you can imagine a giant. You can conceive of a giant existing on planet Earth. But because of the way that gravity works here, it's highly unlikely that a giant could exist on this planet due to, yeah, modality, as Opie says. Um, you couldn't conceive of it on this planet because of the inverse square law of gravity.
So,
The
in the same sort of thing, that if you could, pigs with wings, you know how people say pigs might fly, you could conceive of a particular planet out there where evolution happens slightly differently, and there is a creature that very closely resembles our pig that happens to have wings and can fly. So, that would be another example that sort of ties into that. It's a bit more unrealistic, but you could still imagine parameters where it would exist.
exactly, and as long as you can actually give a concept for it that has no contradictions, makes sense, and that kind of thing, then it is possible that it exists in some possible world.
It's interesting. I mean, I suppose then it's what sort of zombie is he discussing right there? Because there are a number of different movies out there, and I know we're going more into the fantasy world of different types of zombie. You've got your classic slow zombie, your brain eaters, your flesh eaters, and then you've got your more modern zombies that seem to be a little bit faster than they were. You've got some that are actually dead creatures that are just animated by the need to feed. And so is there a specific type of zombie that he is referencing with that?
Yeah, it's nothing like any of those kind of zombies, but those zombies can play a part in us accepting it. I'll come to that kind of later with Daniel Dennett's criticisms and his idea of the Zimbo. But essentially, what Chalmers is talking about is imagine a being exactly like us existing in some other world that's a physical duplicate of us in every way. It's behaviorally the same. It it has a brain similar to ours, only the brain is purely functional. So if you bang your knee, the or if this philosophical zombie bangs its knee on a table, it'll still double over. It'll still grab its thing because the central nervous system fires and causes him to do these things. Um, or if it hears a bit of music, it starts dancing because the brain functions in such a way that it causes it to happen. But it has no actual inner experience. It works sort of like a robot. Imagine a robot programmed to respond to music and dance, or if you ask it questions, it will answer it exactly like you, but it's all done through processing in the brain, as we're talked about, where everything is a brain process that creates the mental state. Imagine the brain doing the processing, but not actually creating that qualia. And that's what a philosophical zombie is.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's, I mean, how do you even test for something like that? I mean, we would not know any difference between them and us, would we?
That's the idea. I mean, you could even put these p-Zombies into some kind of brain scan and see the neural activity and everything like that. And it would look from the physical processes that they were having some kind of inner experience because we have similar processes. And they would respond in the same way as us, but they just wouldn't have the self awareness.
That's interesting as well. I mean, they'd have that illusion of self awareness, I imagine.
Not necessarily.
Right.
They wouldn't have that inner experience. It would just be imagine a Turing machine. Um, One where you could ask it all the questions and it answers just like a human, and you were told that there was somebody on the other side, answering the questions, but it was really just the computer itself. You would imagine that they were having some kind of inner experience, but that the computer wouldn't be having that inner experience.
So, would the argument for, say, a deterministic universe mean that we were all these p-zombies?
No, because we have these inner experiences.
We
We're
still,
aware,
yeah,
when we bang our shin on a table, we actually feel it. We don't talk about pain in terms of just the C fibers. We actually feel that pain. The p-zombie would have all these things fire, but not actually feel the pain.
interesting. So, by the same notion, what would they see if they're not having the experience of feeling? Would they have the experience of seeing the world around them as well?
Probably not, because it would just be the brain processing it.
Interesting. So they'd almost have those.
The eyes would take in an image, and the brain would process it, and then cause the body to do whatever.
It's similar. I was just going to say, so like the robots that I mean, they're getting more and more advanced now. But the ones that when they get to like the Robovacs, they get close to a service, they turn around and do that because it's a programming. They're not actually experiencing. Oh shit! I shouldn't go down here. Or I better turn over this way. It's just oh, program says this. Do it.
Exactly. And
Awesome.
imagine if you could speak to that Robovax and say, "Have you done the upstairs?" And it turned around and said, "No, I've not done the upstairs yet."
And it would give the appearance of knowing what I was talking about, but programmatically, it sort of does know, but it doesn't have the experience of knowing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, interesting, very interesting concept. So, I mean, they are definitely conceivable, then, aren't they?
Well, that's something that Daniel Dennett argues,
Oh yeah.
that we might think that they're conceivable, and but it's a faulty intuition that we have when we say we think we can conceive of them. Going back to the idea of you discussing all these various other types of zombies, when we hear the word zombie, it creates in us a kind of intuition about a being that just lumbers along, has no inner experience. Yeah, exactly. Um, but that intuition about what those zombies are like taint our idea of the p zombie because it causes us to automatically assume. But if you think about this now, a being that's exactly the same as us physically would have the inner experiences because it's our physical nature creating those inner experiences.
So I suppose this is talking about the argument of what actually gives rise to consciousness. So if everything if what we have around us is what gives rise to consciousness and allows us to have experience, if something was exactly the same, it would be very hard for it to actually not have any of those experiences.
Exactly. So if you think of the term Zimbo rather than zombie,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of removes that intuition about being able to remove consciousness from the P zombie and still have the same kind of creature because that automatic intuition about the word zombie is removed. So if you think about it in terms of Zimbo, a being that has all these inner experiences is physically just like us, these are conceivable. But now imagine conceiving yourself, but taking out that inner experience. You can't conceive of it if you think brain gives rise to mental states.
No, I mean if it was absolutely physically the same as us, then I could conceive of a creature that was very, very like us, but for some reason didn't have it. But a creature that was exactly the same of us, yeah, no, I hear that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? And this comes down to the idea of conceivability and possibility and things like that. Um, like if I ask you to conceive of water that wasn't made of H2O, you can sort of conceive of it, can't you? You can
Well,
conceive of a planet where there's a drinkable liquid that's clear, exists in
wouldn't be
oceans
water
and
though.
lakes. Exactly.
I mean, water is. I mean, it's definitionally H2O. So,
Exactly.
unless it is H2O, it's not water. I
Yeah,
can imagine something very, very similar. I mean, we could find something out there in the universe where temperatures and pressures and all of that, a different chemical combination, actually end up with something that is just as useful to us as water, but is different. But it still wouldn't be water because it's not H2O.
exactly. So what you would be conceiving, even though you might think you're conceiving of a drinkable liquid that's called water that isn't water, you're actually just conceiving of the word being used in a different way.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I didn't. Wasn't there a YouTuber who was talking about how he could imagine water that wasn't H2O?
Possibly.
I seem
I
to
don't
remember
remember.
you. He was having a conversation with a philosopher, and they were going back and forth through this conversation. I just remember the conversation you telling me. In fact, it might have been T Jump or someone like that.
It's possible.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't remember.
Oh, hope he's got a video that could put a damper on water equals H2O. I'm looking
Ooh.
forward to that. Yeah, nice one.
Well, there you go. That might be Thursday's review.
Yeah. This is what Daniel Dennett kind of argues that we're just, even though we think we're conceiving of it in a particular way, we're not actually. There's other intuitions that are sort of tainting it. And if we were to sit down and try to coherently conceive of these things, then we will find that we're not. He calls them intuition pumps.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, from that, obviously, we can conceive of a similar creature, but not an exact same creature. But even if we can conceive of this creature that is very like us, but does not have consciousness, does that make it an actual possibility, though?
I would argue yes. Um, like you could imagine a creature very similar to us where everything is deterministic.
Mm-hmm.
In sort of like the Roomba or a robot that works just like us and responds just like us, but a biological creature. Um, so if the idea of how it looks from the outside shows us that something is consciousness purely just a physical process? I mean, do we expect certain properties of a of consciousness outside of the functionality?
Oh, I don't really know. Do things that are conscious know that they're conscious?
That's a good question,
um, and if there was something that appeared conscious but wasn't, and you asked it if it was, would it
and
say
it
yes?
responded yes. Yeah.
So then, are any of us really conscious, or do we just have the illusion of consciousness and we're all operating
Well,
automatically?
that is one of the arguments that consciousness is purely a physical process that's created in the brain. God, I'm knackered and I can't remember what Daniel Dennett calls it now. But it's basically all the different systems in your brain giving rise to a particular experience. Qualia isn't particularly a thing outside of the complex information processing that goes on in the brain.
Yeah, interesting. You know what, I've got this book actually that I've been meaning to read for about 3 years, which is about the origin of consciousness. It's about like this fat and this long, and it's one of those topics that really, really, really interests me, and especially when you watch programs like Westworld,
Yeah.
and it really like gets your mind going. And I finished I finished all 3 seasons, and I want to watch them all again just to go through it and watch it with a different light as well, because knowing what's going to happen, you can pick up on more things in the background and all of that. But even then, like, these are things that definitely appear conscious, and I would say that they do have consciousness. You know, yeah, but it's all ones and zeros, man. But then, is that all we are as well?
Exactly.
Yeah, there's no little person inside your head watching the television.
Exactly. You are your consciousness, basically, or that's one way to look at it. Um, like if you think about Descartes, he sort of separates. He says, because I can imagine myself without my body, but still being conscious, that shows that consciousness is a separate substance. But can you really conceive of that? I mean, you can imagine yourself, you can imagine your personality existing in a computer or something like that. But can you imagine it without something to do the processing and bring it about?
Yeah, I mean, I'd need at least my brain somehow being kept alive in a jar or of that. At which point, yeah. So I think they're very linked, like as in consciousness to the brain. I don't think you can have consciousness without the brain. Um, Now, the brain I am using there very broadly. I'm not speaking just our brain. It could be, as you mentioned, a computer that is programmed to simulate the brain in the same way that mine works, and then my consciousness can be overlaid onto it. Um, I still don't know if that would be me transferring my consciousness and it would actually be going there, or if it's just replicating it and it's a copy. We're going to go back into transporter problem type territory there, if I go on that. But yeah, oh.
Well, there's a thought experiment from John Searle called the Chinese room. And this sort of gives rise to like the computer or the Turing machine as well. Imagine that you have a room somewhere, and this room is sealed off, and within this room is some person that has access to everything there could be known about the Mandarin language. But he doesn't actually understand the Mandarin language. He just knows how to use all this information to translate a phrase or give the correct answer for a character, or even a group of people in the room all doing it. None of them know the language. If you slip a piece of paper into the door, they will then translate that, write down the translation, and pop it back out. From the outside, you might think that the person inside actually understands what's going on. Um, it might seem like they're doing the processing, that kind of thing, or they have an awareness of what the language means. But really, they don't. And this is the idea that, like a Turing machine, you could be talking to a computer and it could be answering you correctly, but it's really just doing a bunch of processing. It has no actual awareness of what it's doing. Is is consciousness that bit of awareness? That's that's one of the questions that could be asked. Do you have to be aware to be conscious, or simply awake and processing things?
I'd probably categorize it with a form of awareness, but I am no professional.
Same. I just find the discussion interesting.
Yeah. Um yeah, and then obviously you've got, there's always that split between consciousness and sentience as well, isn't there? Um and it's one of those things that what I read, they often get them like, mixed up one way or the other. And I used to think it was the other way round, but it seems to be there's consciousness and then there's sentience. Um, so if consciousness is that being awake and aware, and then you've got that next level on from sentience. How do you actually draw this line between the two of them as well? Like, how can we test for creatures that aren't like us, for example, that, what is the test? How do we know? How can we test that they're actually they've got consciousness and they're fully aware of themselves? And then how can we take them that further into sentience and actually examine whether they are fully sentient creatures as well? What are the tests for consciousness and sentience?
I know it's quite a difficult one, isn't it? Um, this is why ideas like Chalmers with the property dualism, where it's not just a physical, there's some kind of phenomenological sort of aspect to it where you have to be able to feel, you have to be able to be moved by music, feel saddened by the death of a family member, that kind of thing. There's properties over and above the physical. They might be generated by the physical, but these properties are consciousness, is sort of the idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones that's just, there's so much we still don't understand about the topic. And I mean, like, not just us. I'm talking about everyone, all the stuff that you read. There are so many different thoughts and ideas on what qualifies anyone to fit in any of these parameters. And yeah. the mind really boggles. I do have to read this book as well to see if it gives me any answers. It's just one of those ones that is so big that I look at it and go, I'd really like to read that.
It's not a Blackwell companion by any chance, is it?
No, it's The Origin of Consciousness in the Biseminal Mind. I will quickly Google Origin of Consciousness in the breakdown of the Biseminal Mind by Julian Jaynes.
Not heard of that one. That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, it actually even came with an audiobook, which was on CD, and I was like, "Where's my thumb drive, man?" um, Although I do have a CD drive still. It's just one of those things where I looked at it and went, "What is this?" The thing is, it's one of those things that, like when I was walking to and from work, I'd make a lot of use of the time, and I'd listen to a lot of podcasts and all that sort of stuff. But because of lockdown and being working from home this year, I haven't actually had the time to do all of that sort of stuff because I've been at home and I've been in a very sort of home-based routine. And really, I need to try and make sure I get back into the habit of going for like a couple of times a week and an hour-long walk by myself to actually, get back on listening to stuff like that or reading the book. But it's just one of those things. By the time the day is done, I don't have the ability to read a book that fat.
Yeah, understandable. I mean, I was hoping to reread like Dennett's paper and a couple of chapters of Chalmers' books and stuff for this podcast, but didn't get a chance. So mostly just jotted the notes down from memory type thing. And sometimes you just don't get that chance to read.
No, I know. It's frustrating. I wish I did. It'd be nice to be able to win the lottery and actually see if it really is time that is preventing me from reading, or if I'm just fucking lazy.
Both? Why not both?
I mean, there's a bit of that there, but I really enjoy reading. But that's the other side of things. I'd always go on holiday and stuff like that, and have a long old read. I'm not one of those people that like spending a lot of time by the pool or doing anything like that. I like being active and walking around, but I would spend an hour or two every day reading a book. And it was just that was my time to catch up on all my reading. And I think that the last book, in fact, I've read quite a few since, but the last holiday book I had was A Briefer History of Time by Stephen Hawking, which was a really good book. Really enjoyed that one. But yeah, haven't had a holiday in a couple of years now, and the way things are going, I'm not sure we're going to be able to next year either.
Yeah. No, I'm quite lucky in that I do get opportunities to read during the day while I'm as in the home office and in between chasing after the dog and, doing the housework and stuff. I do get to read, so
Yeah, I mean that's a good benefit. I'm too busy coding. If I'm lucky, I can put a short video on in the background. But I find that if I put on a podcast or a long video, I end up just staring at it, and I just don't get on with my work. Which means I end up having to work until like 6, 7 o'clock at night, and then I get in trouble with the wife.
understandable. I just saw a message go by from Opie asking if we're familiar with Alex Rosenberg, and I have to admit I'm not.
No, and I'm gonna quickly Google who that is, uh, unless it's something to do with the Einstein-Rosenberg bridge.
Sliders.
Wow, what a classic! You must be the only person I know who actually has ever watched Sliders. I really enjoyed the
It's an
show.
amazing show.
Yeah.
Um, I have to admit, philosophy of mind was one of my weaker areas. It's an area where I only really scored about mid 70s.
That's still a good score there.
Oh yeah, it's okay, but like I say, it's one of my weaker areas, so I'm not particularly well read in it.
What's your strongest area?
It was usually ethics,
Yeah, fair. What did you score in that?
usually around 82, 83,
Nice.
and some of the political philosophy like power and various different ideas. I generally scored around 85.
I suppose, even if quite tenuously, that sort of relates back to ethics in a way, doesn't it? So you're sort of,
It kind of.
yeah. Um, there's always that interest there of something that you're already interested in. It's kind of like this. So
Yeah, it drives it, so
yeah. He's an American philosopher and novelist. Um, he is the R. Taylor Cole Professor of Philosophy at Duke University. Um,
nice.
he's well known for his contributions to philosophy of biology and philosophy of economics. And he describes himself as a naturalist. So does that mean he gets nude? Should we do a naturalist episode?
Good God, no. Not with my body. And not in the winter time.
Hang on, wouldn't the winter time be a little bit better because your heating is on?
Who can afford heating? I'm a student.
Fair. So was there?
Uh,
And sorry, carry on.
I think I was about to say the exact same thing you were about to say.
I was just gonna say. So
Asking Opie about anything in particular to do with Alex Rosenberg.
yeah, we'll wait for him to come back to us on that one. Uh, and Opie, if you feel like joining us, you're obviously more than welcome to discuss a particular topic. I can send you out a Discord link if you want. You can, in fact, you're already a part of our Discord server. So if you want to come join us in the SciPhi channel, you're more than welcome to. If I can remember how to do it, but of course, I find Discord confusing because I'm old and past it.
I started coding on the ZX81. You're not old and past it. That's me.
Yeah, my first programming language was QBasic. I don't know if that really even counts as one these days.
Wasn't that an MS-DOS thing?
Yeah, it was great. You just basically you'd create stories and with all the different options of the things that you could go down and discuss like oh, you've reached so and so, what do? Do you turn left, do you turn right, or do you open the door? And you'd go open door, and you'd go, ah, you've just opened the door.
I wrote actual text adventures when I was younger.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was in the same sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I wrote mine in BASIC and Pascal. like standard Commodore Basic or uh, just the regular MS-DOS Basic that came with DOS for a very long time.
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe it's a similar one, but yeah, I didn't really get properly into coding. I thought I got into coding when I started using Visual Basic, but what I was really doing was using other people's things, and then I got through it through the web design sort of side, and then a lot of that just is out of my brain, and it became VB within Excel and SQL and all of that sort of thing. So Opie's now updated us. I hope that little segue was entertaining for you as it was me. A couple of old coders here.
Old
but,
fogies.
but he says Alex argues for naturalistic explanations of mind and social sciences, like physicalism. So basically what we've done with our last couple of episodes, we would have basically been arguing against his position in a way, because we've been with Mary's room and with the p-Zombie experiment, we have sort of shown that there seems to be more to consciousness than the pure physical.
Sort of. I mean, I think there are natural explanations for everything. I think our experiences are explained physically, ontologically. Um,
But
but yeah, but I think that there are certain properties that aren't quite physical, they're phenomenological. Or if you think of something like the laws of logic, us using them can be reduced to the physical and the processing in the brain and the swirling of atoms, and but the laws of logic themselves aren't reducible to something physical.
um, do they exist without a mind to have created them in the first place?
Exactly. It's there's something that we experience rather than, say, a brain process. You know, that kind of thing. And I'm probably not putting it very well, but I'm quite shattered.
No, I understand that. I suppose in some respects it's I'm going back to one of our fresh air videos that we recorded around knowledge and certainty, and it was Andy's explanation about how we see order in the universe, but we see order in the universe because we've created this mathematical structure that explains the order, and it's quite orderly because we've given it the order, but it just is not necessarily with the order we've given it. It's the same way that if you hit a load of balls playing snooker or pool or any of those, you could mathematically explain every single hit and everything like that. And oh yes, look, it's very orderly the way it's gone. But every time you hit it, even if you hit it almost virtually the same, there's going to be that slight variance there, and that one might just veer off, and but you could then go, oh yes, and this is the order, this is why it was a slight different angle, and again you're giving that order. So is it? Yeah.
I mean, before we go on, there's one more thing about conceivability and possibility. I mean, this idea is quite an interesting one. The something being conceivable being possible. And there is a lot of material on it which I didn't get a chance to go back over, so I apologize. But here's another idea. Um, this one comes from David Papineau, and he's a physicalist, and to be honest, he's one of my favorites. Imagine a woman called Jane, and she has two entirely different groups of friends that don't mingle together. Um, and one group knows a person called Cicero, and one group knows a person called Tully. Now, both groups speak about these people, and she gets to know them not in person, but she comes to know them through these stories that people tell. Now, she conceives of these as two different people. But imagine that Tully is just a nickname for Cicero in one of the groups of friends. So she can conceive of Tully and Cicero as different people, but it's not possible for them to be different people. Not in this actual world or not in any possible world.
It could even be that the person's called Cicero Tully, and one group uses it as a first name and one uses his last name or her.
Exactly. So conceivability does not necessarily entail possibility. I know Jane didn't have all the facts which enabled her to be able to conceive of these two people, as you know, to conceive of this one person as two different people. Um, and if she had all the facts, she might not have made that mistake, but she didn't, and she still conceived of these two people, and it's still not possible.
Yes, I suppose in some respects that was my question right at the beginning, um, about just because you can conceive it, does it necessarily make it possible? Um, and it's one of those things. There are times when it could be possible. It was possible that they were two different people. It just happened that it wasn't, and it is possible that there is some form of p-zombie or Zimbo, but probably doesn't.
Yeah. The idea, I mean, that's one of the ways you could attack Chalmers' arguments by arguing that conceivability does not entail possibility.
No, and I suppose that goes back to as well, uh, the ontological argument, doesn't it? Just because you can conceive of a god doesn't make it exist.
Exactly. Just because you have a coherent concept without any contradictions, you could say it's possible that it exists, but it doesn't necessarily entail its existence not anywhere.
No, interesting, very interesting. So, I mean, on that, where does that leave us with the whole p-zombies thing? Yes, they're conceivable. We don't know if they're possible or not, but probably not.
Yeah. Um, I think, to be honest, I think it's quite a good argument for showing that physical properties don't necessarily entail phenomenological properties. We can look at the physical processes and, that kind of thing, but that also doesn't necessarily mean that consciousness is something separate to ontological properties. It's just a dual kind of property, one that we experience as well as one that is created by physical properties.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. I,
To
to be honest, Dave. I mean, this whole tonight has got my mind going so much on the consciousness, um, front that I keep getting stuck in my head on the. Well, I just need to read that book and see if that helps answer any of the questions.
I've got a bunch of books that I need to start reading on it, but I've got my head sort of stuck in like ethics and things like that at the moment. I'm rereading Alistair McIntyre's After Virtue, and I've got a couple more that I want to finish off. So
And speaking of ethics, anyone out there who is interested, next Tuesday, 2nd of December, I think is the correct date, we are going to be doing an episode on morality. Now, we did an entire season on ethics and morality on Fresh Air, and we were pretty exhausted of the topic by the end of it. But a lot of things have come up in a lot of discussions, whether it's been on Twitter or on Facebook or just random things that are mentioned or questions people have asked or common like misconceptions that you see, and people make one sort of statement about either subjective or relative morality and then contradict themselves by saying something else, but they don't even realize that they're contradicting themselves. So we are planning on. Well, I actually created these cards almost a year ago now, I think.
Yeah.
I've tweaked them and tweaked them and tweaked them. The more I've sort of looked into morality, and throughout the season on ethics and morality we did in Fresh Air, and conversations I've had with Dave and Martine, and it's going to be a combination of different things. There's going to be a bit on value in there as well. And what we're going to lean on is some of the articles on Answers in Reason as well, like does morality have a purpose? And on value, and is value entirely subjective? So I'd suggest, if you're interested in this topic, go to answers-in-reason.com and check out some of these articles and get your objections ready for us, because you're probably going to get a basic idea of what we're going to say. If anyone wants to actually join us for the episode, we're happy to have people on as well. We like a roundtable discussion. We're not looking for the argument style. We're not looking for anything like that.
We're looking for something. We're looking for something dialectical, not heuristic.
Exactly. So if you want to have that conversation with us, whether you're a subjectivist or a relativist or objectivist or whatever, nihilist, you know, whatever your ethical position is, we'd be interested to hear from you. We are going to be going through a number of slides. Now, I made these slides as sort of quick reference cards. But we'll probably end up doing a bit more discussion about them, because they are as short bullet point as they can be, and they probably need a little bit more explaining for people who don't fully know as much about the topic as others. So anyone who is interested in that as a topic, please let us know. We'll give you access to our Discord server. You can catch us on Facebook or on Twitch or on YouTube or Twitter. I think that's the main places we are. We're also on Instagram, but I never log in there, so there's no point in sending us a message there.
Yeah, I don't use it either.
Well, I log into my personal one, but unless that, I'm not going to add you. Not you, especially not you. You know who you are. You're definitely not having a look at my kids.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, I mean, I'm quite excited to do this one, and I do want to have as many people there live on air with us as well, whether it does end up being through the chat room or you join us and you become one of their little faces. It should be a good conversation. And it'd be great to have any objections and maybe point out any flaws that I've done with this slideshow, so that when it actually comes to producing the final cards that I will upload to Answers in Reason, people can go through and download. And when you hear some common misconceptions, you go, well, actually, and you can just give them that bit of information, especially for a place like Twitter, because you are so reduced in your character count that 280 characters is not enough to discuss most complex topics, especially ones like morality and epistemology and all that. And you end up writing hundreds and hundreds of tweets, and people start getting involved in between them, and you're just like, wait, no, let me finish what I'm trying to all right, read this article. I don't click links.
Yeah, not just that. You're less likely to be dogpiled on here than on Facebook, and we're less likely to be dogpiled on.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the problems with conversations on places like Twitter and Facebook. There seems to be this habit where atheists will see something that they think is wrong, and everybody piles on, and it makes discussion hard, because people then start joining in their little tribes and defending their little tribe. And we want to kind of improve the actual discussion and have
Definitely.
actual discussions. Yeah.
I mean, one of the examples on that one, and I quite often see on Twitter, is the a theist might say, without God, that makes morality subjective and morality is objective. And a bunch of atheists will dogpile on going, morality subjective, morality subjective, morality subjective. And you can ask them why, and they go, because there's no God. And you're like, right, what's your actual understanding of morality? It's subjective. And it becomes this circular reasoning thing. And do you know what? There are plenty of good arguments for subjective morality, and I'm not denying that. Um, but that is not one of them, and that is one of the misconceptions that will probably be addressed. I can't even remember what's in the slides now.
No, I
but
can't.
but if not, I'm sure it will come up in the show anyway. So yes, please, anyone who's got any questions, please get them in advance as well, because we'll address them at the end. But we will also address any questions as they come up throughout the show. So that will be next Tuesday at 8 p.m. GMT. We were thinking of doing one for Thursday as well, weren't we?
Yeah, we haven't quite come up with a topic yet.
Well, Opie suggested something, although I don't know if we've got time to research it fully. What was it? He
Russell's World?
Yes, Russell's World. You said you wanted to do Russell's World and then Russell's Teapot.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a great discussion. I mean, I know the two thought experiments anyway. I probably have to do a bit of brushing up on them, but I know the actual thought experiments. So yeah, it'd be fun to do.
Awesome. And Opie, as always, if you want to join us, you're more than welcome to. I know time zone's a bit of an issue for you, and you tend to be listening either just as you finish work or on your drive home. But if there is any chance that you can join us on Thursday, or if you want us to push it back maybe a little bit so that we can fit you in, we'd be happy to do that. Let us know though, because I'm going to set up the schedule for that one as soon as I can do a graphic of a teapot.
Yeah, we'd have an actual smart person on here rather than us two dumbos. Then
Sounds good. Dave, was there anything else that we needed to cover off on the philosophical zombies?
no, no, that's the basic grounding and sort of a couple of the basic arguments that go along with it. It is most definitely worth looking into. Um, because to be honest, it Mary's Room, Fred's Red, the Zimbos, the philosophical zombies, these all changed the way I look at consciousness. And they moved me from purely a physicalist view to the idea that there is a phenomenological property to consciousness.
It's interesting. I wonder if there'll ever be anything that changes your mind back.
It's possible. I mean, I'm open to anything, and I basically follow the arguments to what convinces me. I'm quite happy to change my mind about anything, pretty much.
Yeah, interesting. I tell you what, that's something else that we should cover off in a future episode. Changing a mind, and not just going through like your article. Changing a mind, respect matters, but also people that say things like, "Well, all I need to change my mind is evidence." Ah, that was the other one that we were going to do at some point. We were going to do skepticism versus pseudo skepticism and denialism.
Ah, yeah,
So
and
there you
cynicism.
go. And
Yeah,
yes, and
yeah.
cynicism. Yes, exactly. So there you go. We've got a few planned up. We are going to be doing in no particular order except for next Tuesday, which is morality.
um, Interestingly enough, I've also been going back to my first year studies and going through them again, mostly to do with the philosophy of religion, because I know it's a lot of atheists that listen to us and they like the discussions about atheism. It's really only the people interested in philosophy that are into topics like this. I think all atheists should be interested in topics like this, because there's always the argument, no, 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 the mind is physical. Well, here's some examples of why the mind might not be completely physical. But I think maybe we should do a couple of episodes related around our why we don't believe in God or arguments against God, those kind of things.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Actually, I mean, we did do that. 10 questions for atheists one, and I'd like to do some more like that. I'd also like to do similar videos from atheists where they're either particularly good or particularly bad arguments that you might hear atheists make. I mean, we've got a series that on Answers in Reason of bad atheist arguments. So maybe we could take some of that, combine it with some of your philosophy of religion as well, and perhaps do something along those lines. So yes, loads of stuff. And if anyone does have any ideas, feel free to do it. You know, if there's a topic that you're interested in, or there's a video you want us to review, or anything like that, we're up for it. You know, we like expanding our horizons. I'll have a look into Alex Rosenberg a little bit as well, OP. Unfortunately, on Thursday it's Thanksgiving in the States, so he'll be busy with dinner with the family. So
Understand.
yeah, that's
Hope
more
you
than
have a great one,
understandable.
though, Opie. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want me to do your dinner music,
Um,
um,
Speaking of the videos about, the 10 questions and stuff, I have actually been gathering quite a few.
oh, have you?
And yeah, so we could do a few of those. And there was a couple of interesting ones that were kind of questions similar to Trinity Radio. And one in particular I came across was 10 questions for atheists from an atheist.
Interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, so I thought maybe that might be something good to cover.
Do you remember off the top of your head who that was by?
Hang on a minute. I've got them saved in a playlist.
Cool. So whilst you're looking that up, I also had a brief chat, as in one message either way, with Braxton from Trinity Radio, who
Oh,
said
nice one.
he's planning on doing a series of all the responses he's got from atheists. And he's got so many, he'll probably answer each question as one. So I took the opportunity to send him a link to our video response to it. And hopefully we will actually hear something from him. I'll be looking forward to his response, and then we can do a response to his responses. But it's
Yeah.
also he's gonna be reviewing a lot of the atheist arguments, and I'm very interested on who we're going to agree with more, because he is a very well reasoned theist, and I can imagine a lot of the atheist answers he's got might be like a lot of the conversations that I have on Twitter, which are the less rational side of atheism. And that's not saying all atheists are irrational. I mean, I think I'm fairly rational, and I'm an atheist, and he's definitely very rational, or at least he appears to be. Um,
I pretend to be. I make a good approximation as somebody with some rationality.
So it'd be interesting to see that. I think we could probably get quite a kick out of some of the answers that we get. And I also think that what we should do when he releases those videos, we should actually watch them blind. Like, completely this.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be good. The video, the 10 questions for atheists from an atheist, is somebody called Dallas Wade.
Oh, I've not heard of him before.
I haven't, but he seemed like quite a genuine guy and quite a nice guy when I was checking the video out.
Ah, awesome. All right. So I think after this, Dave, we should actually try and put a little schedule down, and so that we don't forget what we're doing, and we don't get to, Thursday and go, oh, crap, what were we doing over the next couple of weeks, man?
Yeah, sounds good. And we'd be able to plan a couple of streams a week then.
Yeah, definitely. And that's our general idea. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8 p.m. GMT. That's our primary time that we're going to be doing these shows. I know that is a little bit early for our American listeners and watchers. Obviously, that's 3 p.m. on the eastern side, and some oddly godly hour on the western side. So hopefully you guys catch the reruns and can enjoy them. If you do have a topic that you want to discuss with us, we might be a little bit more flexible with our times. It might have to be at a weekend or something like that. And you should may as well make use of the fact that we are stuck in lockdown at the moment, because we will be a bit more flexible with our times because we can't do anything else. Not that we would, anyway.
I'm in Wales. We aren't in lockdown.
Shush. You will be soon.
Yeah, they're thinking of doing one over Christmas, I think.
Oh, really? They're actually going to be locked out during Christmas?
It's yes and no.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll be able to go visit family members on Christmas Day, Boxing Day, that kind of thing, but it'll mostly be a partial lockdown, so essential shops, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm a couple of days behind, but the last thing I checked over here was you were going to be allowed to do like the Christmas and Boxing Day, but then from the 1st of January, it's just going to be a hardcore lockdown for another month. But it's supposed to be a proper lockdown for January rather than this lockdown that we're in that is absolutely pathetic and not really having much of effect on anything.
I
it's
don't
it's
expect
a lockdown, but all the schools are open and like most of the shops are still open.
you can go to the pub till 10, you know.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
so
don't expect Boris to do anything particularly effective ever, except tackle little kids during rugby.
Dearie me. I am so desperate for this whole pandemic to be over. It's
Well,
uh,
there's 3 vaccines coming, Pfizer, the Oxford vaccine, and I can't remember who the other one was now.
yeah. No, I
But they
was
all seem to be hovering around 96 to 97%
I
effectiveness.
thought the Oxford one was supposed to only be 70% effective. The other two were about the 90%.
Ah, okay, I think I'm misremembering then.
Um, but I think that might have been the single dose effectiveness, and I don't know if the Oxford vaccine had done the 2-dose trial yet, whereas the others had done, and they'd actually said if you have a half dose for your first one and then X time later you have a full dose, you end up with 90% effectiveness. The only problem there as well, though, is you've got all the anti-vaxxers who are not going to take it, but you've also got people who are not necessarily anti-vaxxers but are nervous about how fast this has been pushed through. And whilst there are plenty of logical arguments that this has been a worldwide pandemic, we're a lot better at virology and things like that, and there's been a lot more funding, and there have been a lot of the things that slow it down have been removed so that they can get on and do these mass tests. People are still like, well, no, usually there's an entire year of human testing first. It's like, yes, but the reason for that is no, a year has to be a year. I'm not taking it until it's been tested for a year. So there's a lot of fear about what could happen, and I understand the fear of the long-term effects as well. I mean, there could be something unknown. So again, it's the fear of the unknown. I do understand people's position on this, and I'm not going to lie. There's even a certain amount of nervousness that I think with it, because it does seem quick, but that is because I know I'm tied into my bias of how I know the process works, and the process is different. So it's like, oh, it's new.
Yeah, sometimes there's good practical reasons to sort of skip out on long-term testing. I mean, if we don't go with it, we'll be in lockdown longer, more people will die.
And the
I mean,
economy
most
as well. On top of that, I mean,
exactly.
I mean, I care more about the life, but if the economy it tanks too much, that will end up having an effect on the life as well. So there is that balancing act. I do think life is more important than the economy, but without the economy, life is fucked.
Exactly. I mean, the amusing kind of thing is all these people going, "Oh, I'm not sure about the long-term effects," and they're all like, "Yeah, we need to get the economy going again. Everybody should just mingle. If you die, you die." Well, what about when it comes time for you to take your vaccine?
Oh well, we might die or might have a long term effect. Okay, so The chances of dying from something
It's
like that.
alright when it's somebody else dying.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I dislike about most people's attitudes towards COVID. Oh well, it's only generally only old people that die. Why don't they deserve to live? They've lived their entire life. They've worked their entire life. Most of them have worked really, really hard, and they've given all their money. They've paid their taxes, and they're now at a point where they want to sit back and relax. And you go, well, they don't matter because they're old. It's just not
Yeah,
fair.
and it's awful.
I can't understand how some people have this attitude towards it. And when it comes to taking it, yes, I will admit I am slightly nervous about taking the vaccine because it has been pushed through quickly, but I will be taking it. I
Yeah.
think that is the best. And do you know what? I may have a reaction. In fact, pretty much every vaccine gives you a minor reaction. You get a little bump on your skin. You might feel a little bit ill for a couple of days. Do you know what? It can happen. But you know what? It's better than either getting COVID and having the complications or being someone that is asymptomatic and gives it to people who then you cause a lot of death, because that's your responsibility. If you catch this thing, even if you're unaware of it because you've been, yeah, it won't hurt me, and you know what, it didn't hurt you, but you've then gone on to hurt other people, have you really fulfilled your moral obligation to other people? Is that really the way you want to look at the world? As long as I'm all right, fuck everyone else. It's not right, is it?
Exactly. Exactly. And here's the other thing, if you've ever done coke or pills or acid or anything like that, you have no reason to complain about getting a vaccine.
Oh yeah. How many dodgy things have people taken? That's one of the things when I see people who are anti-vaxxers, because you don't really know what's in that, mate. And you're
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
really? What did we do at the last festival we were at together? Did you test every single one of them to make sure it was absolutely pure so you knew what was going into it? Oh, you didn't? Right.
Yeah,
That's a substance that's known not to be safe rather than a substance that is supposed to do what it can to protect you. But you'd rather take a substance that is not necessarily safe and you don't know what's in it just because, well, I'll probably be all right.
yeah,
So
that's it. It's insane.
it's
Um, Speaking of this stuff though, you've just reminded me, you know what TikTok is, don't you?
I do know what TikTok is. The missus actually sometimes plays some videos off of it. Once in a while, they make me laugh, but in general, I'm just like, oh, it's midget YouTube. Not that
Yeah, it's
there's
awful.
midgets on it. It's just really short videos
It'd
of
be
people singing along to songs and stuff, and it's like, right, okay.
it'd be better if it had midgets on it. Um, there's an awful trend on there at the moment. I've seen several videos coming off it, and it's Christians in America making videos about fighting against the vaccine because it's going to be the mark of the devil. And there's such a victim complex in it, like, no, I won't take your vaccine. And then they talk about themselves being tortured so that they can be given the mark of the beast, and how if they don't refuse it, they'll be killed. And they're like, I'm willing to take that. I put my faith in Jesus.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. I've actually seen a similar one, except it said, the mark of the devil? It's actually a misspelling. It's the mask of the devil. I ain't wearing that mask. It's like,
Oh
oh
my
my
God.
God.
Yeah.
The thing is, right? I mean, regardless of what my theological position is, if you are a theist that believes in this creator God that is in some way benevolent, that may allow evil for whatever reason, let's not go into that. But what they have done is created us in such a way that we have these minds, and some of our people have used these minds to become scientists, become virologists, study is it epidemiology? I sorry if that's the wrong term. I'm not one of those minds. But there you go. I mean, your God has given you the tools to get over this virus. It's not Jesus gonna save you. He's gone, man. He's gone. He's up in them clouds. He's not gonna come down and heal you. He's done his time, right? Do you know what you do have? You've got your scientists, you've got peer review, you've got everything that goes into making these vaccines. Yes, they're not perfect because we're human, you're human, but it's the best thing that we have right now. So use it.
Exactly. I mean, I could come up with another argument as well. There's a popular apologetic when atheists bring up ideas like, well, why doesn't God cure cancer? Why doesn't God cure this? And there's a popular apologetic that goes something along the lines of God doesn't do it himself. He works through humans. He works through the doctors. He gives doctors the intelligence to be able to figure these things out. Well, why does that stop with vaccines?
Yeah, it's amazing the amount of bias that you find around these topics. Yeah, and you see some of them going, "Well, Jesus didn't take vaccines." Like, okay, but maybe he would have if he was around this time. You
Exactly.
know, you're talking about something that happened 2,000 years ago. There
How do
weren't
you know?
vaccines then.
Well, how do you know he didn't create a vaccine to cure the blind guy?
Indeed, I mean that is true. I've often thought that some of the stories of his medical miracles have actually been things like a healing the blind guy was probably more like a guy with a pussy eye and he couldn't see out of this eye, and he created a poultice which had some form of antibiotic qualities, and he used it on there, and after even just one wipe he was like, oh my god, I can start to see, and he put it on, and that got turned into, oh yeah, he laid his hands on him and he could see. But there are rational explanations to these stories. So either way, even if you do think what he did was a miracle, he's not here now.
Yeah.
So the best thing you've got is to put your trust in these doctors. And we know that science isn't perfect. We do have certain problems where if money does get involved, you've got the whole thing with Andrew Wakefield, and that which gave rise to most of the anti-vaxxer conspiracies, because he was paid off by lawyers to show a link between the MMR and autism, and because of that, you've got all these people who, even though it's been debunked, keep going on and on and on about it. So it's not perfect, but when you have people from around the world all looking at this thing and testing and agreeing that this is the best method, and they're professionals in the field, it's not an ad populum fallacy, right? These are professionals who know what they are talking about. Get the bloody vaccine.
Yeah.
I got awfully preachy there. I do apologize.
It's all right. Understandable.
Yeah, so what was talking about p-zombies and Zimbos turned into me having a rant about vaccines and COVID.
We take conversations as they flow.
Yeah. So anyway, we've discussed our p-Zombieland, our philosophical zombies and Zimbos, and we've been covering off. Oh, hang on. Opie saying there's some fun game theory about vaccines.
Oh, look into that.
Yeah, we might bring that up. I mean, to be honest, it's been a while since we've done a pandemic episode. Um, if everyone takes it but you still get the benefit but no side effects. I mean, that's true, but you'd have to get everyone to take it. There's got to be a certain level, and I think that you need, from what I was looking into and the R rates and everything like that, I think you need about 90% coverage with the vaccine. I mean, that could even be an argument not to get it, and I'm not saying people shouldn't, but if only 50% of the country are going to take it, how effective is it going to be? The other side to that, though, is there's been more studies. So one of the things that we saw early on in COVID were people getting reinfected. which showed that the antibodies weren't lasting that long. It turns out that this might actually be just a few cases which, for some reason, their body was flushing out the antibodies, whereas most people who did get the antibodies actually maintained them within their system for a longer time. So it would make sense to get the vaccine from that perspective as well, because that was one of the objections to it. Well, if your body doesn't maintain the antibodies, then why should you take them? The vaccine's not going to work. Flip side to that is if everybody in the country took them at once and it lasted a month, then it would be gone by the end of the month anyway. But oh, hey, you know what? Good bit there. You know, we're the sci-fi show. We finally did a little bit of science.
Yeah.
We should probably do a philosophy of science.
That would be interesting. It's not my super strongest thing, but I do know a bit.
Well,
I could always do some research anyway.
I'd very much appreciate if you did. I reckon OP would be pretty good having that discussion as well.
He'd be perfect.
So, OP, you can't get away from it now. You've got to come on and join us. And I know your channel's not fully up and ready, but you've got to come on and do a philosophy of science with us. And I'm not taking no for an answer. You can set the date and time, as long as it's not too late, because I've got a little kid. But
This isn't jail. This isn't prison. You can't go around telling people you're not taking no for an answer.
But that would be a fun one to do. Cool. So, as I was trying to summarize before I went on yet another segue, we've done philosophical zombies and Zimbos, and we've discussed recently with a number of different thought experiments about how consciousness might not be purely physical. We also discussed COVID. And we were talking about a few other shows that are coming up in the future. So we will schedule them in. The one that you definitely do have to attend to, though, is next Tuesday, December the 2nd. No, it's the 1st. It's the 1st. I said 2nd earlier, didn't I? It's the 1st.
You're only one day off.
Yeah, so December the 1st, Tuesday, December the 1st at 8 p.m. GMT, we're going to be having our discussion on morality, and we'd like as many people in the chat with us as possible. So anyone that wants to come along, please do. I mean, this is going to be one of those episodes that's a bit different to all the others. It may get to a point where we might have to change things, but I just want to see how many people we can have in here before my computer dies, basically. But yes, thank you everybody who's listened tonight.